see the.
There you go. But then,
since I did the last one, but this is really fun to do an interview with Charles, who I've known of for many years, but we didn't actually meet until last year at his Pastor's New exhibition. I always admired Charles's work because I could really see the influence of great artists like Munnings and other sporting artists that I admired, and I could see, you know, the work that had gone into his pictures to make them look so fluid and effortless. So very talented. I could also admire that he'd obviously taken the trouble to study the horse and the horse's anatomy, which is so important, I think, in sporting art. And I'm not his only admirer. He also had the now King, but the Prince of Wales, do the foreword for a previous catalogue, which I thought was a really nice note and sums Charles up very well. As patron of the Rare Breed Survival Trust, I could not be more delighted to welcome you to this exhibition of paintings by Charles Church, who I happen to think is a very remarkable young artist. How refreshing it is in the era in which we live to find a young artist portraying the rich diversity of our rural heritage with such a unique sensitivity and profound understanding of his subject matter. So it doesn't get better than that, Charles. Yeah, Charles.
No, yeah, that was my first one-man show in London, so it was quite a thing to have. Yeah, I was very lucky.
Yeah, and I share that with you. The Queen, when she was Duchess of Cornwall, did forwards for me as well, and you know, they're very. It feels like such an honor to have them appreciate what you're doing. How did that make you feel as a young artist to have that praise?
Oh, well, no, it's amazing, really. I mean, I was bowled over really to have him write it. The exhibition had a lot of paintings of rare breeds in it, and that's sort of how it came about that he wrote the foreword. But yeah, and it was a huge honor, and I was probably 35, no, 35, I think at the time. But yeah, it was amazing honor to have. Yeah.
And how did your career start and develop? Do you come from an artistic family, or are you the black sheep of the?
It's kind of artistic. My mother paints a little bit, and it's quite good. We're more of a musical family, actually. My father and my mother both very musical, and my brother, I play the piano very badly. But so yeah, I'm probably the only sort of standout artist of the family that I know of that's sort of very much artistic. It's more musical, really. But I think
how interesting. I always like Munnings and Delazzo, both very musical people as well, or love singing, love music.
Yeah, I think.
I wonder if do they go hand in hand? Do you think?
I think it does a little bit. Yeah, I'm sure it does. I think having a sensitivity to whether it's music or painting, it's a very similar thing, and I would say being an artist probably makes you a better musician as well, the other way around. So yeah, that's
that left brain.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
And when did you think that art might be a career for you? Did you always draw, or did it come to you later?
Yeah, I was quite keen from fairly early age. I suppose from 8, 9, I was quite keen, but then weirdly sort of gave it up for O level, and I only did it for A level because what I wanted to do wouldn't go on the syllabus. So I had to. They said you can either do geography or art, and I thought, well, I'll do that. But I'd always loved it, and that first week I started painting again. I was just totally hooked, and it's sort of gone from there, really. Yeah.
And did you start with an interest in horses and sporting art, or
it was sort of horse racing was my great passion at the time. I just got into that, so painting and horse racing came together, and I just got completely obsessed with both at the same time. So I started painting horses aged about 15, 16. Yeah.
And who has influenced you along the way?
Well, I have a long list. I mean, it might surprise you. My joint favourite artist is William Nicholson, actually. But Alfred Munnings would definitely be the other joint. But I think I love them equally. And I love Munnings's landscapes as much as his horses as well. So those two, and I think I really love all those painters from the beginning of the last century who were working out of doors a lot. Sort of de Laszlo, like
Excellent.
that Sargent, Lavery, Anders Zorn, people like that. I love that kind of style of working, and it's not necessarily equestrian things that I'm drawn to, but I mean I do love Stubbs. I love a good Lionel Edwards. I quite like Peter Beagle on a good day.
Yeah.
He was very good when he was on form. So
Agreed. I mean, as an artist, we all have, or they all have bad days, don't they? So
yeah.
You must have, I mean, you know, there's stories of Munnings throwing a picture in the river, and de Laszlo certainly would, you know, just discard a canvas even though he might be 3/4 of the way through
all
a
the time.
commission and just start again. And I think the attraction we have to those artists that you listed is that technical brilliance, that sort of bravura. They're so technically gifted. They put the work in that they are just free to paint what they see.
Yeah, and they all make it look easy, which is the great secret, I think, to good painting.
Absolutely. So I thought what we might do is go through some of your early works, and you can tell us how they progressed your career. And so this first one.
Yeah. So that this is my first sort of big commission, I'd say, having studied in Florence, and I came back, and this is the first sort of really good commission I got. It was Lord Somerleyton at Somerleyton Hall on his Hunter, and I used to paint entirely from life at that time. I don't anymore, and I would go and stay with the client for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, which is, I always felt I was outstaying my welcome after sort of 4 nights. So it was always quite high pressure, but that was I was probably 24 or something at the time when I did it, and quite high pressure, but it was a fun one to do.
Yeah, beautiful house as well. Is architecture something that you enjoy painting, or?
Yes and no. I mean, I always think a house in an equestrian scene can ruin the painting very, very easily, and it's I don't mind it like that where it's backlit, and so it's not really, it's sort of there as a backdrop, but it's not sort of taking over the composition. With great danger, and you do get asked to do it, you know, can I have my wife on a Hunter with the Labrador by the gate and house in the background and the lake, and you're trying to fit it all in, but it's just doesn't work you have to think as an artist and not as not trying to cram everything in. In this case it did work, and I think I was happy with it, but you have to be careful. It's a very fine line, I find, and I try and either have if I'm going to do it, have the house very, very small in the background. I think there's a slide coming up later which shows that, or really, really close up, perhaps, when it's more of acts as a backdrop. It's not detracting from the main subject.
And is that a difficult balance? You have your patrons who might have something in mind that they want, but you as the artist are, you know, what will work and what won't. How do you do that balancing act?
It's very difficult, and I was actually received some very good advice a few years ago from an artist who said you just got to learn to put your foot down. I think the best commissions come about when the person commissioning it allows you completely free, you know, a completely free path of what you'd like to do. The more like you get constrained if I want this particular view, that kind of thing, the less chance of it being a successful painting, in my opinion. And I used to be terrified of saying, you know, back to the client, I don't think that'll work, or but after a while I sort of started doing it, and actually people do appreciate it and understand, and you know, it's the end result that's most important, and you've got to be happy and they've got to be happy. So it's yeah, it's a difficult one, but I mean, it's still now, I mean, I get some clients who are a little bit more pushy about what they like, and others who are a complete dream to work for and just say, you know, you painted exactly how you want and we'll be happy. So
yeah, definitely the dream patron. So we have this lovely one.
yeah, that's an early one. That was I'd say I've had two sort of exceptional patrons in my career who've, I think any artist getting going is so important to have, if you can be lucky enough to have a couple of, or one patron who really promotes you and commissions a lot of work. This was my first patron, and I must have painted 15 pictures for him, I should think. I think this was the first one, possibly, and this is his daughter on a pony, and painted from life. And yeah, I always liked it, actually. I mean, it's looking at it now, it's, you know, lots about it that I'd do differently, but you know, I think for a painting of the time, it's quite a sweet one.
But absolutely captures the pony, which I think is quite a difficult thing to do, is to get character in equestrian subjects. So
yeah,
I like it. I would love to have been painted like that as a child.
Yeah, and I think well, the other thing as well is I paint less and less of this kind of picture, and I'd like to do more and more. But it's the way, I suppose, you charge more money and you end up painting more sort of racing subjects and that sort of thing. And I'd love to paint more of this kind of thing, because this is the kind of thing you do it anyway, rather than it being a commission. You know, it's a sort of fun painting.
What you love, what you enjoy painting.
Yeah, and you can experiment with and so on. So it's quite fun sort of subject.
Nice. And then there was this one, which completely took me by surprise when you sent it through. I've never seen it, and it's extraordinary.
It is amazing. Yeah, it's not as early as the others. It's a little bit later. I've got it written down when it was. Anyway, I think it was 2004 around then. But I had a commission to paint the Sultan of Oman. This is came through Susan Crawford, actually, who'd been asked.
Oh, really?
She'd done quite a lot of work for them before, and she'd been asked to do this, but she said I'd come quite close to Susan, but she said it's just they want way too much in the picture for me it would take me, you know, years to paint, because she paints very, very detailed. And so anyway, I got the commission. There's quite a funny, slightly rude story about so you've got the Royal Camel Corps on the left and the Royal Cavalry on the right. In the centre, this is one of his favourite Arab stallions called Khaleb, I think we say. But when I arrived, I went out for 2 weeks, had the most amazing time out there, and went to the Royal Stables on the first day, and they said, well, what would you like to see first? And I said, well, we'd better see this stallion first. That's sort of centerpiece of the picture. And so they said, well, come this evening and we'll have the horse to look at. And I got there was actually about 10 horses walking around a sort of parade ring. And I said, well, which one is his favorite? And they said, well, they're all his favorite. You can choose which one you'd like. So there was one that was doing that very Araby thing and sort of pawing at the ground, and lovely big crested neck, and he really stood out, this horse. So I said, well, could we have him, please? And they said, that's absolutely fine. Come tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. and we'll have him held for you. And we're also going to get the groom we're going to have a special dish dasher made, just like the Sultan's dish dasher, for the groom to wear. And so I turned up the next morning, and it was almost as though it was a completely different horse. He was fast asleep. He just, they change shape, horses. And I said, well, we need to get him looking sort of interested in crested neck. And there was a lot of discussion. But anyway, they after a while, it was decided they bring a mare in season to come out, just to sort of liven him up a bit. And
Dangerous.
yeah, and I had said, well, make sure it's a couple of fields away, at least. But anyway, sort of remarkably quickly, this very beautiful grey mare was brought out, but it was about sort of 30 yards away. And this stallion got very, very excited. And I've been thinking of the best way to put it online, but basically the poor groom and his dish-dasher got covered in horse semen from head to toe. So it's really sort of both embarrassing but very, very funny thing to happen.
Brilliant. And how long did it take you to do this commission?
It took quite a long time, I think. I mean, I think it's probably 5 or 6 months. Yeah, it was. I was just sort of working it all out and so on. Took ages, and yeah, it's quite a complicated thing to paint. But a fun thing anyway, very different. I haven't done anything like it since. So it's
Yeah.
it's quite fun. I love painting camels. They're great.
Yeah, you can see that you enjoyed painting them. They're really good. And where does this picture live now?
I don't know. It was so it was presented. It was it's every 5 years they the sort of, I think it's called the Diwan, but the sort of basically the sort of nation give a gift to the Sultan every 5 years of his reign, and this was the 35th year of his accession to the throne, and it was given for that. So I imagine it's in a palace somewhere in Muscat. To be honest, I've never found out what happened to it in the end.
No. Well, you have a good photograph, which is always important
Yeah.
to record everything you do. Good. So these, I think, were a pair of early racehorses you did.
Yeah. These a little bit after that, and on the left is Zarkava, who won the Arc de Triomphe for the Aga Khan, and sorry, on the right, and on the left is Goldkova, who was a very, very good horse for the Wertheimer brothers. She won 13 Group 1 races. So yeah, they're there. And
both the same age. Were they painted around the same time?
Yeah, they were within a year of each other. I don't think they ever raced against each other. They can't have done, I don't think, because they were both unbeaten, I think. I'm trying to remember. But yeah, they're around about the same time. I just started to get more racing commissions at around 2007, 2008. That's when I didn't, I purposely didn't paint racehorses or actively seek to paint them commissions until I really felt that I could sort of understood the conformation and so on. It took me a while, and there was an exhibition at the Tryon Gallery in 2007. I think it was called Best of Equestrian British Art or something like that. And I decided to paint 3 of John Magnia's stallions to put in the show. They were the best stallions. And I went over, and they're very obliging over there. And they said, of course, you come and paint tonight. So I painted Sadler's Wells, Monsieur and High Chaparral. And to cut a long story short, he bought all 3 of those paintings and then also commissioned 2 other paintings, one of Hurricane Run, another Arc winner, and George Washington is a Guineas winner at the time. And it sort of snowballed from there, because once he had paintings of mine, quite a few other people sort of were more interested suddenly in, and within the racing world anyway, it's such a small world, people chat together and so on. And I picked up, a lot of work very quickly. Over 2 or 3 years, I was suddenly very, very busy.
Well, he's certainly someone to admire, John Magnier, for his taste in art, both old and contemporary artists who he commissions. That was one of my first experiences in the art world. I was at Tate interning while they were trying to buy Oh My, or thinking about buying Oh My.
Oh yeah.
but John Magno got there. So we were very lucky to have it for the Reynolds exhibition there in 2005. Beautiful painting, and so nice to see it again at the National Portrait Gallery now.
Yeah, I'm desperate to go and see it now.
Yeah, no, it's really, really stunning. But well done, John, for buying it. That took some vision, I think. Good. So this one, I love this one, but slightly unusual, as you were saying.
Yes, well, all the trees being in leaf. Yeah, it's a local painting, and I can't actually remember. I was trying to remember why the trees were in leaf when we did it, but I think it must have been, we must have either done it probably right at the very, very beginning of the season, or sort of almost autumn hunting time of year, perhaps. I can't remember, but I think we're just keen to get on and do the painting. But it's one of those early portraits that I was really happy with, and a really wonderful client, again, great friends, and they're local to here actually, and you know, that's the kind of commission you love, because they're a lovely looking horse, a good looking guy, and top hat and tails. You don't get better really.
It reminded me of the Munnings of the Prince of Wales.
Oh right, yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. No, it's these sort of paintings are a great thing to do, and could do them all day long. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
This one, this is quite unusual as a double portrait. I just thought how romantic to be painted as a couple. Lovely.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? I think it's quite a fun. It's always nice if you get something like this where you've got a group thing, and you then have to sort of think a little bit about how you're going to organize things and make it work. It makes a more interesting picture than just one person, I suppose. And again, it's a nice early one that I was very pleased with, or earlier, say earlyish, perhaps I call it mid-career or something. I'm hoping I'm mid-career now, but yeah, they're again, two nice horses and lovely people, and it's up in Leicestershire actually, so yeah, it's a really nice one to do.
Well, it shows how important the landscape is as well. You really have to be, you have to be everything to do what you do. You have to be a landscape painter, you have to be a horse painter, you have to be a portrait painter.
Yeah.
And then put it all together. So, you know, pictures
Absolutely.
like this really show that off, that skill.
Yeah, it took me a while, but it was probably around this stage of this painting, I realized that the landscapes are so integral to what I do. I had to go out and do an awful lot of landscape painting, because there's no good sort of becoming, you know, reasonably proficient painting horses and not being able to paint a good sky or landscape or tree or whatever. And I think so I've worked an awful lot. I never used to sell landscapes. I used to just do them as a hobby, and then I had a show and I was a bit short on paintings and put some landscapes in, and they were sort of first things to sell. And so now I go out landscaping a lot. I make a thing of trying to do a lot, and I think it really improves commission work if I, you know, painting landscapes. I mean, I think I still got quite a bit to do on landscapes, but yeah, it's an absolutely integral part. And yeah, that's why you look at someone like Munnings, who was the most incredible landscape painter. You know, if he'd never painted a horse, he'd have been a very, very famous painter of landscapes or whatever. So yeah, it's really important.
I think it's why sporting art is still so relevant today as well, because you're capturing landscape, which is always changing and being lost, and it's a very important part of our history, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Lionel Edwards too, brilliant landscape painter. Yeah, it's yeah, really important. Yeah.
You know, and people like this are very connected to, we're all connected to our little part of the world, aren't we? And we have places that we know and love, and that's what makes you want to own pictures, I think, quite often, is when it shows a landscape that's close to you.
Sure, yeah, no, definitely. Yeah.
Not the best photograph of this painting,
No,
but still a lovely picture.
It's just an early painting of mine that I always really liked, actually, and I must get a better photograph of it one day. It's not dissimilar to the last painting in composition, so it's a similar idea. But yeah, they're fun things to paint, these. I like I've said before, they're do it all day long. I probably paint the trees and things a little bit better now, than I did back then. But it's still a really pleasing picture to look at, which is nice. There's a lot of the old paintings. I either look at them and think, oh my God, that's terrible, or actually more often than not look at them and think, actually that was better than I thought it was. So I think this is a very nice picture for when it was done. So
do you ever finish a composition and think, oh, this is the best thing I've ever done?
Yeah, and then I know that it's going to be something really bad about it, because yeah, I find it, if I've had a day's painting and I've thought I haven't done very well, but I've worked incredibly hard, I've normally had a very good day's painting. If I finish a day and think, well, that all went amazingly well and really easily and so on, I know the next day I'll come in and made mistakes everywhere. It's such a hard thing working on your own. You've got no one there to sort of nudge you and say, you can go off on funny tangents if you're not concentrating, and equally with the light in the studio, on certain days you can come in the next day and the painting's all way too blue or way too orange or something because of the light, you didn't have the light quite right and that sort of thing. So it's a very subjective thing, and I normally, when I'm working on paintings, I at least a couple of times during the process, I'll turn the painting to the wall for 2 to 3 weeks. And then when you turn it back, suddenly there's things you never ever have noticed otherwise that pop out, and you realize, oh, I need to change that, or it could be all kinds of things, but yeah, it's a very, very important thing to do.
Yeah, a bit like writing an essay. I always think you need to have the time to just put it away for a little while and then go back to it, because there's always something that you've missed or
absolutely,
a new idea. Lovely.
Yeah.
So this was the exhibition where I met you in person for the first time. And it was a great evening, the opening down in St. James's.
Yeah.
And it was a great enthusiasm. It must have felt really good after COVID to see people again and to see such enthusiasm for what you're doing.
Yeah, it's quite a strange time after COVID, and you worried that people were going to turn up and this sort of thing. And I'd had a friend who'd had a show a couple of weeks before me, and sales had been quite sticky, and it was quite a funny time since November last year. But no, it went really well. It was great. So that was very, very pleasing. Exhibitions are something I probably only do sort of 4 to 5 years, and I put them on myself, and they take an awful lot of work, but they're very rewarding, but just huge pressure and huge amount of work, really. So it's very satisfying if they go well, like that one did. So.
And there were a lot of red dots, I noticed. Was it a sellout?
Almost, yeah, almost. Yeah, I had a couple left, but no, I was really pleased, considering that the last few shows have sold out, and it's it takes a lot to sell a show out. It's
yeah.
I think normally the exhibitions have gone well because I don't exhibit that often, so I've normally got clients. There's quite a bit of sort of pent up demand, if you like. So it's easier for me than I have friends who have shows almost every year, and I think that's very, very difficult to keep showing, keep expecting people to buy. So it's
yeah, we only have so much wall space, so
yeah, absolutely, yeah, no, it's difficult things, but yeah, no, it's nice as well when I have a show to paint other things like that. Bull.
Yeah, well, and the next slide as well. I love it.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, this was in when the then Prince of Wales wrote forward. That was my Great British exhibition in 2005, and this was a British white bull. They're sort of quite a rare breed now, or becoming rare. And I noticed the other day when I was looking at it with you, but he does look a bit lean actually, and that was because I met him and his owners at the Royal Show, and they said, well, he was at a stud in Devon for a while, and he was going to come back to. They were in Suffolk, and they said, well, we can. We're probably not supposed to, but we could bring him on the lorry, and if we stay the night, he can pose on your lawn for you. So he did, which is really exciting.
Terrifying.
Yeah. He's they're enormous, not that high, but sort of about a meter wide, if you can imagine. I mean, absolutely huge. Yeah, he's lovely, lovely looking bull, and he had that lovely sort of pearlescent, sort of quite thin skin. It's quite difficult to paint actually, but I really enjoyed it. Yeah,
it's the most difficult color to paint. I always think white, that sort of, or white or off-white.
well,
every tone,
yeah,
golden there.
it is. I mean, I think I find grey horses the easiest to paint. I was thinking about this the other day, but when I say that, what I mean sort of whitish grey horses. If you get sort of, I painted a horse called Roaring Lion, who's sadly sort of ill-fated, but a couple of years ago, and he was the most incredibly difficult horse to paint because he had very sort of blotchy, sort of almost rony colour to him, really, really difficult. So yeah, grey's the easiest. Chestnut's one of the harder ones, but bay's pretty easy, but sort of roan, that sort of colour, very, very difficult. So yeah.
Excellent. And then I love this pair as well.
yeah. I started painting poultry around about 2002, probably around then, I should think, and with it other farmyard animals, and just really love doing it. It's great. I think it's really important to paint. You know, if I just painted horses, I think I'd go very stale and my work wouldn't improve. I think it's really important to diversify, and they're great things to paint. I love it. Love doing this sort of thing. Yeah, beautiful. Especially geese.
Yeah, no, they have so much character, don't they?
Yeah.
Arrogant little things. And then I put this in because I loved it. I thought it was a great.
Yeah.
Great study of a hound. And very much like the constable dog that you quite see in the foreground of his pictures. I think that's what it reminded me of.
Yes, yeah. Well, hounds are amazing to paint, and actually I found that from a commercial point of view, they're very popular. People love buying paintings of hounds. But I love painting them as well, and they're again extraordinary character, very interesting markings and things. Again, some hounds can be really difficult to paint, but I like painting them sort of out at season, sort of get in the summer, all asleep on the ground or something like that. It's or in their lodges. That's quite fun. Yeah, I think they're wonderful things. So that, again, if I wasn't painting horses, I could just probably become a hound painter for hound poultry for the rest of my life.
Great. I mean, I think we'd miss you as a horse painter, though.
Well, yeah. No, they're really entertaining to paint. Yeah. Well, I'll always paint hounds and do more. I think. Yeah.
Well, again, huge personalities. These hounds.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they are. They're great. Just a great subject in every way. And look at those John M's paintings. He was one for.
Oh, we might have. Oh, sorry, you just froze for a second. No, there's a lovely pair of John M's hounds at Richard Green right now. I just saw them last Friday. Yeah, they're stunning things. Really lovely.
Yeah, I mean, no one really painted them for a while after him, and there seemed to be a bit of a gap. And I think now you see quite a few people painting hounds again, which is nice. I mean, they're wonderful things to paint. Yeah.
Good. Oh, and I just threw this in as well. I'm giving a plug for Richard Green apparently, because I just saw this study by Munnings on the right on
Yeah.
Friday as well. That was in the show, and it struck me how nice it was that you and Munnings you're following in Munnings' footsteps on Exmoor.
Yeah, well, yeah, I used to go down there a lot. I haven't been so much in recent years, but yes, it was wonderful. It's not too far from here. It's a couple of hours drive, and also New Forest as well. I used to paint there a little bit. It's wonderful because you can paint a landscape down there, and the pony might walk into it, or you sort of slightly follow the ponies around. They don't tend to move too quickly if you start painting them, so you can work away from life like that quite a lot down there. It's quite, as long as you don't get disturbed by someone with a camera sort of quite often.
Yeah.
Off. But yeah, it's yeah. I love the British landscape. I always have, and I don't get, sort of particularly. I've never been to Africa, but people often say, "Would you go to Africa and paint those scenes?" And I mean, I just love everything in the UK, and I don't, at the moment, I don't sort of see a reason to go anywhere else. We have so much.
It's extraordinary. It's a small island, and the different landscapes you have in such a small area is just beautiful. I love Exmoor. I've only been a couple of times, but to ride on that landscape is quite something.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's amazing, and I mean, and the seascapes in this country as well. I mean, I just think we have the best seascapes there are. I go up to Scotland painting every year, pretty much, and I love painting up there. It's just absolutely incredible seascapes as well. So yeah, I'm very lucky, and I endorse it here. I'm just really blessed with local amazing landscapes and seascapes around here as well. So yeah, it's very, very
something
lucky.
new every day. Well, that's the nice thing about landscape, is it changes. Every day is different. And so every day is a new subject. Yeah,
no, 100%. Yeah, no, it's really great. Yeah, I love Munnings' sort of wartime down in Withypool, painted an awful lot. They're fantastic. They're very, unlike a lot of his work at the time, they're very sort of free and sort of without any, no one's trying to make him do anything. He's just working away, quietly, painting ponies and sheep and things, and they're fantastic pictures. Yeah.
Agreed, very much so. So I thought it'd be very interesting to talk about commissions and how they happen and how you work through them. And so as an example, I thought we'd use the John Holliday portrait that you recently did. It's now hanging in Palace House at the National Horse Racing Museum, and it's part of a series of commissions that the British Sporting Art Trust is doing. So we have Marcus Hodge and Susie Whitcomb, Tanya Still are all doing works. So it's a really great way of combining contemporary sporting art with historic sporting art in one space, and it's interesting challenge to hang them together, but I think yours shows how well it works, and it was a pleasure to see.
Yeah, no, yeah, well, to pinch myself to see it hung there, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Also, it's huge.
By far the biggest thing I've painted, and that in itself, an awful lot of challenges, which some of which I hadn't even considered at the time, but they're.
I mean, it hardly fit. We had to bring it in a horse box because there was a bit of an issue with transport, and it just fit a 2-horse horse box, just.
Yeah, no, when I stretched the canvas here, I stretched it in the studio, and I went to bed and woke up in the middle of the night and suddenly almost having a heart attack. I suddenly thought I'm not going to be able to get it out of the door. Actually, it did fit just, yeah. But yeah, no, it was very, very big. Yeah, but that's wonderful opportunity as well. So I'm very grateful.
And difficult. Is it much more difficult to paint big than small?
Yes and no. It's kind of really strange. I just sort of all the rule books that you're used to just get thrown out the window, and you find you just have to work in a completely different way. And I probably, in some respects, I maybe went about it the wrong way. I now look at sort of look at a big Rubens or something, and you see the way in which they painted it, and I painted my picture the way I paint a smaller picture, in a slightly organic process, and I didn't over plan it. And I think, well, I'm happy with the way it worked out, but I mean, I think if I was to do it again, I might have done an awful lot more studies and worked from a tighter concept before I started, because I get sort of halfway through and start taking hounds out and moving them, and actually I enjoyed it and enjoyed working that way, but it took a lot longer, I'd say. But yeah, it was a really interesting process, and yeah, fantastic opportunity to do.
And
Yeah.
how did it come about? I think you did this earlier. Picture.
Yeah, so that picture on the screen on the left is a study for another painting I painted of the same John Holliday on a different horse about 5 years before then. And at the time, I went to see him for a few days and came up with these two sketches that you see on screen, two options of things to paint, and decided to go with at that stage with the one with Belvoir Castle behind, and that painting worked out very well. And then when it came to painting this picture for the trust, I decided that it was decided that we try the wooded scene, so the one on the right. So I went back to have a few days following the hunt, and with John posing for me, and I did change it actually quite a bit, I suppose, from the study you see on the right. It's some finished picture.
Yeah, I think the next slide shows. Yeah.
So these are sort of early stages, very early stages on the left, and then yeah, sort of slowly building it up. And I guess I wanted a little bit more of a portrait, just being the scale it was. I didn't think that study that I'd done on the screen before I felt it wouldn't have worked on the scale quite so well. So it's a little bit more, looking slightly more side on at the horse than that one. And yeah, it was going to be, the horse and rider was going to be smaller within the painting, but when I got it stretched up and started working away, I actually made it bigger. I thought sort of go large or go home. So the horse is pretty big in the painting. It's probably at least half life size, but it could be more. But yeah, and the woods was the background probably took me longer to paint than the actual subject. Because of the distance, it was up in Leicestershire, and I did some studies up in the Belvoir Woods, but I used Bryanston School Woods down near me because Bryanston was built about the same time as Belvoir Castle, so they have almost identical woods with lots of yew and beech trees. So it was really useful at the time, because by the time I got onto working onto the landscape, it had gone through the summer and it was back into winter again. So I was able to go out locally and do a bit of work in Bryanston Woods and come back and use those studies to help me build up the landscape to this. But it's yeah, as I say, it was a very organic process, so it sort of probably took longer than necessary, but it was, I think in some ways that's good, because you go through all kinds of different options and then you draw out what the best ones could be.
And what was it? How long did it take from starting? I suppose the larger canvas.
I think it was over a year to paint. Yeah, longer than I thought. But I did give it sort of 2 or 3 weeks at a time, not working on it, because you couldn't work on it all the time. It's just too much. Unfortunately, the studio here is not big enough to turn it to the wall. I sort of could, but I always end up walking around it and seeing it. But yeah, it was really difficult challenge, but really enjoyable. Yeah, absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Excellent. I think we have one of it in
There it is. Yeah.
finished in its wonderful frame, and we were discussing earlier how important framing is to pictures, and it really can make or break a picture, and it really is crucial.
Yeah, I've got a wonderful frame of Philip Ellison in Pusey, and he hand makes frames from scratch in the old way, and you can design your own frames there, which is pretty much what I do. I mean, I think that frame's a sort of molding that he already made up, but other frames they make for me, quite a lot of them, I choose what detail you want. If it's a gilded frame, choose what detail you want on where and fiddle around with them. And it's so important. I years and years and years ago, I painted a painting very cheaply, but the client got it framed, and it was a sort of 2 foot wide painting of some mares and foals, and they got a sort of inch wide mahogany frame around it. It looked terrible.
Yeah.
I decided there and then I'm just never going to let anyone frame my paintings again. I think most people are grateful for you to provide the frame, because it's quite a hassle for people, and for a lot of people they don't know where to start looking for frames. And
yeah, it's a shame to buy something that you really love, and if you choose the wrong frame, it kills it basically.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll always give a client 2 or 3 choices of frame to choose from. I think that's important, because it's at the end of the day, it's got to hang in their house and so on. They've got to like it. But quite often I'll say there's A, B, and C, but I strongly recommend A. But yeah, usually, it's so important. I'm big, really massive fan of framing my own pictures. So yeah.
You're much nicer than De Laszlo. He said you will have this frame.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
He had a nice mix of antique 18th century frames and contemporary frames from actually just on the King's Road here, funnily enough.
Yeah.
Close to where I'm sitting now.
Okay.
I'm also next door to Munning's studio in Chelsea, which is
very
nice. I'm steeped in the history here.
Yeah, amazing.
I love these shots of you. It's your masterpiece.
Yeah.
And it gives a nice idea of your studio as well, I think.
Yeah.
How many pictures are in there, and how many easels, and how it works.
Yeah, I have is it 1, 2, 3 easels sort of permanently in here. This one behind me here is a nearly finished painting of Flightline that I'm working on. Who's an American horse, won the Breeders' Cup Classic. And that one is a horse called Olympiad, who was second in the Breeders' Cup Classic. But two great American horses.
So have you been to America recently?
Yeah, I was over in April, May time, I think it was. Yeah. And I'm going back in. I've been asked to be official artist of the Breeders' Cup next year, so I'm going to Tryon in August to do some studies there, and then I've got another commission of some mares and foals to do in Kentucky and on the same trip. So I'm doing more and more in the States these days, which is really fun. I love working over there.
There's a really strong appetite for sporting art and racing pictures there.
Really much stronger than here, really, and they're just great enthusiasts. Ever since I've ever gone to America, you get really well looked after, and I think something about being a British artist over there, it's fantastic. So yeah, wonderful place to go, and very I've been very lucky. So I think typically I'll be out there once or twice a year from now on, probably, doing things. So it's great.
Lovely. Oh yes, I had to include one of the British Sporting Art Trust patron, now Queen Camilla, unveiling the picture recently.
Gives a sense of the scale as well.
It does. It's huge.
Yeah.
it took a little while to figure out how to devise something that a drape that could be pulled down off it, but I think it worked well. We had a little weight in the hem of the fabric. So
I never had a chance to ask you how you done.
no, it stayed in place really well. I was very relieved. It was quite a stressful. She was meant to come in March, so there was about 6 weeks to get the picture there, get things moved, devise new displays, get a drape for it. It was cancelled in the end, but really thrilling that she was able to come back so soon.
Well, yeah, no, and I should say that your rehanging of the museum is absolutely fantastic. So it's really wonderful.
Very kind. Yeah, it was really nice to go back because I was there in 2020 and it was COVID and I didn't really get to do very much. So to go back and get to rehang the Munnings and make them look as spectacular as they should do, it was a great pleasure. So nice to be able to share it with everyone as well on an occasion like this.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. No,
But it was really interesting how well your picture hangs with the room is full of stubs, basically. So a great compliment to you. I think that it doesn't look out of place. It looks absolutely part of that sporting history, that painting history in this country.
Yeah, I think it's probably partially the frame as well, which is kind of of that era. So yeah, I have to pinch myself seeing it up there. Yeah.
No, we're very happy to have it, and it's much admired. So I thought we'd just talk about what you're up to now and where you see yourself going and what your plans are. You've spoken a little bit about America being a bigger market now. So yeah, who is this lovely pair?
This is actually an Australian race mare called Atlantic Jewel. Hence you can see that sort of V on her shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
And it's actually painted at Coolmore in Ireland. They've got a farm called Anne's Gift, which is just the most spectacularly beautiful place you've ever been. It's really beautiful old farmland, sort of parklands rather, and all of John Magna's best mares are there, and it's a really, really amazing place. And so she was over there being covered by Galileo, I think. So it's an opportunity to go there instead of having to go all the way to Australia to see her. That was a nice. Again, mares and foals are a really fun thing to paint. A little bit different from racehorse portraits. Present different challenges and so on, but always make nice pictures, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely. I like that one a lot. Whoops, sorry. I've gone. Uh-oh. Sorry, this is where my technology fails me. There we go. Good. Back to the Johnny Bowden, I think, in his family.
Yes, that's sort of fairly local to me as well as West Dorset family, and so they bottom left of the picture you can just see the house. So that's sort of how I like to paint a house in the picture if I can get away with it. But I mean that was a wonderful landscape, and the fun thing about this picture, so that his wife and one of the daughters didn't ride, it actually made it sort of more of an interesting picture actually. So having them walking alongside, it's a really fun picture to paint. The daughter at the back, she won the Groucho Derby last year, I think. So she's a very good rider.
Yeah, you can absolutely see that. A very impressive bareback horse on the bit.
Probably borrowed from Munnings a bit in that sky, I should think. But it's a little bit. But yeah, it's one of my pictures I've done more recently that I'm really, really pleased with. Yeah.
Is that the biggest group portrait you've done?
Getting on for it. Yeah, it's quite big. It's I might have done bigger, but it's about 4 foot wide, perhaps. In that picture, I'm trying to think something like that.
It's a lot of figures and animals to make it work. It's really difficult.
Yeah, they are a challenge, these sort of pictures, because silly things like not having the horse's legs all doing the same thing. It's quite a lot of work in sort of designing them behind the scenes, but then you want to make the thing look as natural as possible. Yeah, they're not easy paintings to do this kind of picture. And also the other thing is when you get a close-up horses and then background behind them, but really quite distant, it can be very, very hard to make that drop right back and not jump forward. And quite a challenge paint, but again, I think that's probably where painting lots of landscapes come in helpful for me.
I've just noticed that we're almost an hour, so
Right.
there aren't too many left that we've chosen, but we should probably go on a little bit.
It's a horse called Dunaden who won the Melbourne Cup, but he also won a big race at Longchamp, that is in Paris. Yeah, lovely old horse.
Lovely. Sorry. Okay, I wanted to go quickly, but not that quickly.
Yeah.
And the famous enable.
Yeah, that was painted last year or the year before, I think. Frankie Dettori and John Gosden up at Clarehaven, commissioned by John, and yeah, amazing mare. Really, yeah, amazing mare to paint. She's lovely. And Frankie came and sat on her, which is almost never happens, but she'd retired, and you know, to get a jockey to pose on the actual horse is extremely rare. So I was very lucky. Yeah.
Well, and Frankie, how amazing in the year of his retirement now to look back on this.
Yeah, amazing, and I'm glad. I painted two of Frankie now actually, but I'm glad I got to paint him before he retires, because you know, he'll go down in history as one of the greatest, won't he? So
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the study on the left. Yeah.
Another famous horse.
Yeah, for the study of Frank, I actually just did for my exhibition a few years ago, and I really desperately wanted to paint him. Went to see him in his first season at stud, and yeah, amazing horse.
He is such a handsome horse. Really stunning. Are you ever tempted to keep things like this?
I have the odd one. But what tends to happen, I get people come to the studio and then friends and so on, and end up buying them over dinner and things. And so I don't keep that many, but it would be nice to keep more. And I have got quite a few, but they're not as nice as this one. So.
They're really nice.
Yeah. I
thought this was really unusual. And an event rider, you said, Liz Murdoch.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's on her eventer, yeah, up in Gloucestershire. Can't remember what year that is, about 8 years ago. Yeah, quite fun to do something a bit different, more quartering angle and so on. And an upright painting, I hardly ever paint a upright format of portrait, so quite fun to do that. And she was
it's a fair point, isn't it? We don't really have a lot of pictures of the other sports, you know, dressage or show jumping or eventing.
Yeah,
I mean, less money in those, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's partly it. I move a lot more in racing circles than I do in eventing and so on. And yeah, I probably only painted maybe 8 eventers in my life, maybe, compared to nearly 9 times as many racehorses or something. So, and quite a few hunters and things, but not so many eventers or show jumpers. But yeah, no,
we'll have to work on that, I think.
That's
a nice Newmarket picture. Yeah,
that's Nassau, who won the Derby, and it's at Moulton Paddocks where Charlie Appleby trains him for Godolphin, Sheikh Mohammed.
And what makes a chestnut difficult to paint?
I don't know quite what it is, but if you get the chestnuts vary in colours. Some are sort of quite pale and pasty, some are quite orangey, some are much darker. And if you get it very, very slightly wrong, it's completely unrecognisable. And yeah, I don't know what it is, because bays vary as well, but I couldn't tell you what it is, but I do find them very difficult. Yeah, they quite a lot of greens and things in the bottom of it. Chestnut underneath, where the belly turns round, it's reflecting the ground underneath the green. If you get it wrong, it just doesn't look right at all. So they're very hard things to paint.
Very challenging.
It's a nice one.
Oops, sorry, I think I skipped over one. Again, I love the study, seeing the studies and then the finished picture.
Yeah, that's a good example of so that's a sort of study I'd produce on the left as a sort of working out my composition, and also to show the client what to expect. And the finished painting on the right, that's some side glance. There's good also of Andrew Baldwin's. It's up at King's Clear in Berkshire. Historic racing centre. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I thought we'd finish on your lovely Ascot procession in honor of racing this week.
Yeah. I got the opportunity to paint that in 2013, and it was really amazing. For anyone to see the procession up close in the park, it's absolutely wonderful. And I went there for 2 days, and then to the Royal Mews and things for a bit. It's wonderful. I think that painting must be still on loan at the museum. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, it's on display in the museum. I'm going to move it, I think, because I don't love where it is. I think it should come into Palace House and be part of the bigger permanent displays. So on my to-do list.
Great. Yeah, no, it's wonderful picture.
Good. Well, thank you, Charles. That was really, really interesting. Sally Bills, do you have any questions?
We haven't got any questions. I think I usually have loads, but I think you've covered everything within the talk. I could have listened to you all afternoon. It was wonderful. If anybody does have questions later on, please feel free to email them to me at the usual address, and I will forward them on to Charles if you would like me to. So please do that. That would be welcome. Thank you both very much. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And please do visit Palace House, and you can see the picture on the screen, as Catherine said, and the main commission that Charles has done, which truly is spectacular. And as Catherine says, looks wonderful in the space in Palace House. So if you haven't seen it, you must make a visit and see the displays at Palace House. Thank you both. It was a nice, refreshing change for us, and we will probably use that format again. I think it worked very well. The next talk is on the 20th of July, and it is Ripley. He's a photographer, and he's been commissioned as part of the coronation year to do 20 works, 20, Catherine? 12 works of the Household Cavalry, which are all within places in London related to the coronation. They are wonderful, and we seem to be going for the large at the moment.
They are huge. I saw them for the first time last week, and they're very big, so it's going to be a challenge hanging them, but they're spectacular, and they've taken 5 years of intense work. I think photography gets short shrift sometimes,
Yeah, and he's truly works and manipulates the medium in a very interesting way. Definitely worth visiting. They're going to be on display between the 8th and the 30th of July. The next talk's on the 20th of July. You can sign up in the usual way. Also, I'll just call out that we've got the band of the Household Cavalry coming to Palace House on the evening of the 14th of July. BSAT members get a reduction of 20%. It's £25, so it'll be £20 for BSAT members, including a glass of wine, but that should truly be a good evening, and you can come and see the Ripley and Charles's works at the same time. Okay, thank you very much. See you soon. Thank you.